We welcome you to the Building Community Pop-Up PD series, and today we have session 1 on promoting collegial relationships. This is presented to you today by the Connecticut State Department of Education Turnaround Office. Pop-Up PD is designed to be quick, timely, and responsive to your needs. So it's important to share with our office what topics you'd like to see in the future to continue to support you. Our hope is that this is another opportunity to join together as a community of learners in facing new challenges, leaning on one another, and ultimately working towards achieving equity and excellence for all students. The structure of Pop-Up PD may be something you turnkey and implement with your own staff. We all know there's a wealth of knowledge within your own school and district. Having these short, bite-sized PDs led by a variety of staff may be something that you adopt and adapt within your own schools. I'm Amanda Pickett, an Associate Education Consultant with the State Department of Education. My work centers around school climate. I come to this conversation with a variety of experiences in mental and behavioral health and supporting schools in their efforts in integration of behavioral health and school service delivery models. I primarily focus my work on supporting schools' capacity to promote positive school climate through multi-tiered systems, PBIS, restorative practices, community collaboration, and classroom management. I'm a certified school social worker, an endorsed PBIS trainer, a licensed restorative practices trainer, and an affiliate of Courageous Conversations About Race. Personally, I'm a mom and wife of 2 little ones, a kindergartner and a preschooler. Here are our learning targets for today. By the end of this learning time, all participants will be more familiar with why and how collegial relationships promote positive school climate and ways that you as a leader can align and model practices with your staff that you might be using with your students. We hope to provide a path to resources that will support your work. As leaders, you're always thinking about how to implement practices and policies within your school. And usually you're thinking about what that implementation looks like with students. Careful consideration around how these will be installed in your system so that it's sustainable is needed. Today, I want us to reflect on how we are implementing practices and strategies around school climate intentionally with our staff. How are we developing systems of support around relationship building? I'm going to have you pause here for a moment and reflect on how you believe collegial relationships impact school climate. This is why. Building and sustaining strong, positive relationships between and among students, teachers, and leaders is fundamental to promoting student engagement, social emotional development, and academic growth. When school leaders prioritize creating a culture of positive adult interactions, it allows teachers to feel part of a larger team, where each adult has a responsibility to support all students and feel supported by their colleagues. This in turn can help teachers feel comfortable observing one another, discussing their practice, sharing knowledge, asking for and receiving feedback, and raising concerns. It can also empower teachers to try innovative strategies in their classroom and to express multiple views. Each of these factors is necessary for teachers to hone their craft. Establishing a culture of caring and trusting relationships among and between leaders and school staff can ensure that the adults in the school are modeling for students what strong and positive relationships look like. When students see their leaders and teachers engaging in warm and trusting relationships with each other, they're more likely to engage in those same types of interactions with their peers. Ronald S. Barth, founding director of the Principal Center at Harvard University and a former school administrator, wrote the quote you see here. If the relationships between administrators and teachers are trusting, generous, helpful, and cooperative, then the relationships between teachers and students, between students and students, and between teachers and parents are likely to be trusting, generous, helpful, and cooperative. Second only to family, school is the most important stabilizing force in the lives of young people. The school environment provides a natural setting to foster positive relationships among students, adults, and peers. Building positive relationships within the school environment involves certified staff, classified staff, students, volunteers, community, and family members. For this series, we're looking at this definition: the positive connections between students, adults, and peers in the school setting that foster positive social interaction and establish a nurturing environment of trust and support. This is essential to build positive school climate and promote academic success. I also want to make a connection here to social emotional learning. On the left, you see the graphic from CASEL. Their wheel depicts the 5 core competencies of self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. These definitions are designed for both children and adults. As you can see, the competencies are interrelated. The competencies include skills that are significantly correlated to success in school, work, and life. I want to be clear that relationship skills are one piece of SEL, but a foundational one. It's very challenging to teach, support, and provide feedback on social emotional learning skills if there isn't a foundation of relationship. Taking a multi-tiered approach to our work is important. We think about this all the time with our students. I want you to think about how you're taking a multi-tiered approach to your staff. What are you doing universally to support staff? And how are you building frameworks for decision-making to ensure additional supports are provided to those in need? What kinds of data do you have around relationship building in your school? Qualitative and quantitative data, things like school climate surveys, or your own read or feedback you get from teachers. How are you using that information to make decisions about practices and strategies? Also making sure that you're thinking about how you're monitoring for fidelity. So if you say that you're doing this, how do you know? The strategies and practices are what makes direct impact on students and staff. What are the practices that you're using with your staff? What are you hoping to achieve with them? Are your staff clear on the expectations around these practices and strategies? Every school's triangle is different. Context matters. How are you using data to determine your needs to ensure that you're selecting practices that will create a healthy continuum of supports? We don't want initiative fatigue. What we are hoping for is that districts are intentional about assessing their current practices, analyzing their data, and finding ways to align and integrate the strategies to create an approach that's unique to their school's needs. We're going to look at this integration in a little bit. I want to connect this next session to the staff morale presentation and strategies that were discussed. If you haven't checked that out, I suggest that you do. Items like being joyful, providing emotional support, developing a school culture around sharing, flexible scheduling, open communication, and providing professional learning were discussed. I want to expand more on how we can align initiatives and promote collaboration and fair process to improve relationships and school climate. Strategies are important. I just want to remind everyone that in order to select a strategy, you must review your data. What are the needs? Why are you selecting the strategy that you're selecting? And what are the outcomes that you're hoping for? So what are you all doing to impact your school climate? Take a moment to reflect. At the State Department of Ed, we're taking a multidisciplinary, comprehensive approach to support positive school climate. We want to be strategic in how we're using data, analyzing it, and determining our concentration and area of focus and selection of evidence-based practices. Engaging stakeholders, families, students, community partners, and school personnel are critical to our approach. We believe that positive school climate is rooted in equity. It includes many multidimensional elements, many that you see on this visual: social emotional learning, behavioral health, family engagement, attendance efforts, school discipline, and curriculum and instructional strategies. I've selected this visual to prompt our thinking about how and why we select the strategies we've selected. By thinking about the various practices that crop up each year, we have to be more intentional about the approaches that we're selecting and how we're aligning them. All of the approaches work within this multi-tiered system that you've already built. Matching the approach to the student and school community needs is important. Working smarter and not harder. We don't need to throw out everything we have done before every time there's a new idea. We just need to see where it fits along the continuum of supports. What do these look like with the adults in our building? How are we fostering these strategies and skills with the adults to support this becoming woven into the fabric of our school climate? Setting the tone and allocating time for relationship building can create an environment that cultivates trust. Administrators we spoke with described the importance of engaging with teachers using the same relationship strategies they expect teachers to use with students. I encourage you all to write down all the practices or strategies that you're using with your students and how you can model those and do those with your staff. Things like running community building circles, giving 5-to-1 praise to correction, promoting self-care and mindfulness, finding ways to include these in faculty meetings, design of your school days, and communications. I want to take a couple minutes to illustrate what I'm saying about practicing what we are doing with students with our adults. I'm an endorsed IARP trainer, and I know many of you are probably familiar with the practices. I'm sure you've heard about the affective questions and how you can use them after an incident or problem behavior. I want us to look at how we might use these questions to debrief a teacher observation. Let's look at how we can adapt those and use them with staff. The first question is, what happened? You may shift this question to what happened in the lesson that I observed. What is the teacher's experience in the lesson that they modeled for you? The next question is, what are you thinking at the time? You might adapt this to say, what had you planned to happen in the lesson? How did it go? Offering the teacher some time to provide feedback. What have you thought about since? What reflections do you have now? What did they notice about what happened now that they have had a moment to reflect? Who's been affected by what you've done? You might adapt this to say who was impacted by the lesson and who wasn't. In what ways have they been affected? Again, you might shift this to saying in what ways have students been impacted, or why were some students not impacted by the lesson? And the last question around what do you think you need to do to make things right is shifting to this shared leadership. What can you do to improve the lesson next time? How can I support you in that? This is where we can really demonstrate restorative values and collaboration, improving practice and providing supports. So here I want you to think about what are things that are important to you around decision making. There are 3 available options here. Think to yourself, how do you want to be engaged in decision making? Select the answer that most represents what's most important to you about decision making. Making decisions is a large part of your job. Transparency and seeking input are important, but not always possible. I want us to unpack FAIR process, another critical feature of restorative practices. FAIR process is a shared leadership technique. Personally, I've been trying to craft emails in this way. The central idea of FAIR process is that individuals are most likely to trust and cooperate freely with systems, whether they themselves win or lose by those systems when FAIR process is observed. The 3 principles of FAIR process are engagement, involving individuals in decisions that affect them by listening to their views and generally taking their opinions into account, ensuring that you're clear with stakeholders about their role in this part of the process, how their feedback will be used. So just because they shared an idea doesn't mean that it will happen. The next critical feature is explanation, explaining the reasoning behind the decision to everyone who has been involved or who is impacted by it. And lastly, expectation clarity, making sure that everyone clearly understands a decision and what's expected of them in the future. FAIR process is not decision by consensus, does not set out to achieve harmony, isn't democracy. It's really about this shared leadership approach. When we think of FAIR process, we would like to think of it as an isosceles triangle, where all angles are equal. We spend equal amounts of time in each of the areas of engagement, explanation, and expectation clarity. However, in times of crisis, the time dedicated to each of these areas may shift, and so may the angles of the triangles. In this case, we might spend far less time in stakeholder engagement. Instead, we rely on experts in the fields, but that means we need to spend more time in explaining the decision and even more time explaining what the impact of that decision will be on those involved and what their role is in the execution of the decision. Here's a scenario that I'd like you to go back to, maybe unpack it with your team. How could FAIR process be used? Maybe this is a crisis decision and the attention to each feature shifts. So I encourage you to go back and unpack this scenario with your team and discuss how FAIR process could be used. Collaboration is always important, but I think it's needed now more than ever. You know the demands that your staff is under. We need to be fostering ways to work smarter and not harder. As leaders, I want you to be thinking about the systems you have set up to support your teachers. Collaboration's key, and collaboration with diverse staff, not just the usual suspects. I also want to highlight that these relationships need to exist between and with diverse individuals and groups. We tend to believe that we have relationships with others, but if we critically examine them, we have relationships with those with immediate proximity to us or who are most like us. As leaders, you need to be modeling and encourage relationships with all staff, students, and families. We don't want silos of relationships. Collegial relationships promote talking about practice and sharing craft, observing each other, providing feedback, and supporting one another. Things like common planning time can assist with collaboration, but can also be used in structures like interdisciplinary teams, where you discuss students, you meet with parents, you plan activities, professional learning communities, or your critical friends groups. On the right side, you see a checklist. Think for a moment of these practices, if these practices are in place in your school or district. Do multidisciplinary teams meet regularly? Grade level teams, special education, support services. Again, not silos of support, but a multidisciplinary team. Do teachers have common planning time and planning periods, including time with their special education colleagues and other specialized supports? And do all teachers serve students regardless of their assigned grade level or department? Do we have a culture of all? This is a short clip which wraps up many of the ideas that we've looked at: collaboration, alignment, and supports. Here you see an example of teachers working on a school climate initiative, collecting data, and providing feedback. For those of you in the Commissioner Network, think about how this connects to the work of the walkthroughs. It's so important to practice with staff first so they know it, experience it, and can demonstrate it before we ask them to do it with students. So let's take a moment to look at this clip.
We as a teaching staff, we're going to learn best when we learn from each other.
It was there. They just don't trust themselves.
Because we participate in small groups called the flocks, we have this profound sense that we're not alone in this work.
At Pearl Cone, we have a really clear structure because when you're consistent, room to room, hallway to hallway, academy to academy, kids know what to expect. And so they feel safe within that structure and are quicker to learn.
I feel like we've built a culture of like, you know what the expectation is. The flock was developed by a group of teachers born out of the idea that we want consistency across the board, also the level and rigor of instruction.
Part of the goal is teamwork and making sure that everyone participates, right?
We are really, really clear about our expectations. So we have 5 core values. They are in every hallway and in every classroom. So they see it all the time and they hear it all the time. We also have non-negotiables that are really specific.
We always look for, are we promoting the core values within our classrooms? And are we holding kids to behavioral expectations called the non-negotiables? So the flock was born out of trying to gain a consistency classroom to classroom with those expectations for kids.
All right, you guys know what's expected of you today, correct?
We took a model of looking at peer feedback and how we could really support each other for the sake of our kids. We have teachers of various disciplines and various years of experience. We're looking at classroom behavior, classroom culture. Looking at those core values, we can kind of check off what's being adhered to or broken. The rubric is both qualitative and quantitative, so you're able to write notes on what you see and writing that evidence down to have more meaningful conversations. And then we talk about what we've seen. When we look at the core values, a lot of what we saw was evidence of others first. Just how they responded to each other was a short example of that. So having that conversation is really helpful because we get a lot of feedback.
You watched hands go like this.
But as they were talking to each other, you see some of the hands kind of slide down.
They feel like there should be right or wrong, but you're trying to get them to see their own identity. And I think that that's where you are pushing them.
When I get feedback from my colleagues, like, hey, immediately you had 3 or 4 table groups that raised their hand. I now am more aware going into another class. Am I answering that question or am I posing another question that allows the student to dig deeper?
All right, you guys are working. You got 15, 20 minutes.
We've seen just huge reductions in off-task behaviors.
I think one of the biggest benefits to the consistency is there's a common language. When a kid hears me say, good job, you really showed grit there and like persevered through it, and they go to another classroom and they hear the same thing, there's no confusion. We are able to instill in them a changed perspective. It allows us to access the resources that are already in them, going, hey, you have this great capacity to learn and grow.
I'm not going to say it defines who I am, but to the world, yes.
Awesome. So that was the flock. Feel free to take back and share with your team. So to wrap up, 3 key points here. Collect data. What are relationships with staff like in your building? Outline your initiatives, practices, strategies, things that you're doing with students. Think about how are you modeling and practicing those with your staff. And last, support collaboration and clear communication. Thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate you taking the time to be with us. This slide is a playlist that contains several resources and topics that can be read, watched, listened to, or acted on to support and promote efforts to building community. Please take a look and share with others. Again, thank you so much for listening. Please feel free to reach out. Again, I'm Amanda Pickett. Email is the best way to reach me, and I look forward to hearing about how you're building community.